Lives Matter. Brandi has a chapter in Madison, or affiliate.
Our organization, Young Gifted and Black, is affiliate of Black Lives Matter, but not a chapter.
So your goals and objectives are the same as Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
So just so you're aware of that, and many of the issues we're talking about, since Black Lives Matter deals with systemic racism, we're really talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So, Brandi,
all right.
You're free to.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. So again, my name is Brandi Grayson. I am from Madison, Wisconsin. I noticed a few faces. Hey, people I saw last, what was that, Saturday? We did training. Well, very nice to see you guys again. Very nice. I was not expecting to see you today, so I'm very honored. So I've been doing kind of community work, activism work for over probably 15, 17 years, something like that. I've worked in many different capacities. And we founded Young Gifted and Black in 2014, right after Mike Brown was murdered in Ferguson, Missouri. And we asked ourselves, what does systemic racism look like in our city, Madison, Wisconsin? So we said, what can we do? What is our campaign? And this is before Tony Robinson was murdered months later. What can we do? How can we address systemic racism? How can we address what is happening before this thing happens in Madison? Like, that was our stance. If we don't do something, if we don't help people become aware, then someone's gonna die at the hands of the police. A black boy's gonna die, a black girl's gonna die at the hands of the police. And little did we know, our worst nightmare came true. Tony Robinson was murdered on March 6, 2015 by Matt Kinney. Which we organized, created some demands and some protest demands, such as free 350 black people, indict Matt Kinney, build people, not jails. We have so many campaigns that were happening at one time, because when we started, prior to Tony Robinson being murdered, our focus was the Dane County Jail, because they were talking about spending $167 million to build a new jail in Dane County. What we know is that black people in Madison, Wisconsin makes up about less than 6% of the population. Any given moment in Madison, the Dane County Jail has 50% black people. 50%, and our population is less than 5%. Our children are arrested at a rate of 16 to 1. Our adults are arrested at a rate of 11 to 1. Race to equity reports and other data and research shows that black and white people in Madison commit the crimes the same across the board, so something's wrong. How are we being locked up at a rate of 11 to 1? And what is creating this disparity? And it goes back to the story about the spider, right? Like, we are, when we are born in the United States of America, and I can only speak about the United States of America, it's the only place I was born at. But when we're born here, we literally breathe in racism. We literally inhale it, and it becomes part of how our brain fires, our neurons, our transmitters, and what we've been taught and conditioned to believe through cultural normative behavior and white culture, because what we're speaking of is white culture. In America, what is normal is white culture. White culture, how to talk, how to dress, how to act, what you look like, what you say, what you don't say, everything. White culture, how professionalism is defined, how excellence is defined, everything. So what happens is that America is framed and rooted in white culture. White culture is normative, and anything outside of that is seen as abnormal, not okay. So when I say that, I say because a part of white culture, what I've noticed, is this is my observation, and my grandmother is Norwegian, believe it or not, and she had kids and they just got darker. So when we take pictures, my grandma's in the middle. My grandma just passed, rest her soul. But when we took our last picture at her 88th birthday party, there's a white woman standing in the middle, and as you go down the generations, we just got darker and darker, you know. So I say that because being around my grandmother and for holiday dinners or whatever, the culture was different than being around my black part of my family. So at my grandmother's house, we couldn't talk loud, right? Like, we had to be like, yeah, you know, so really intimate conversations going on over there, one over there. You know, you can hear everybody. And then I go with my black side of the family, we're like, what You know, people playing spades over there, talking crap over there, somebody doing a slide, the kids playing outside, people sitting on the porch, enjoying themselves. Different culture, right? And then you take that white frame of what's polite and what's acceptable, and you just oppose that to what it looks like being around black people, and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong with them? Why are they so loud? Why are they so aggressive? Are they fighting? Are they mad? What's wrong with them? No, we're not fighting, and no, we're not mad. We talk loud, and that's part of the way we communicate. And what we fail to recognize is that culture is passed on genetically. So I don't know where I'm from. I don't know where my ancestors from. I just know that I came from someplace, right? Someplace in Africa, maybe. Maybe I came from Haiti. I don't know, you know. But wherever I came from, I carry that culture within my blood, within my DNA. So I might be from West Africa. And in West Africa, people talk loud. That's part of the way we engage and interact. But when you are framed around white culture and what's normal, everything outside of that is scary and is seen abnormal, and you need, and this desire to fix it, to change it, to make it assimilate to you, right? And that is what racism is. So I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm not racist. I got black friends. I even got biracial kids. I'm not racist. My daughter is black. Well, I'm just here to tell you that you probably are racist. And it's not to make you feel bad, or it's not a personal thing. This is something that we all must acknowledge, one, and accept, two, and then act upon, three, right? We have to acknowledge, one, accept, two, and act upon, three. And I think it's really hard for most people to even engage in the conversation about the possibility of them being racist, because it feels so personal. And then when you hear it, it's like, wait, what you trying to say? It's like almost calling a white person racist is like calling a black person the N-word. Very offensive, right? Very offensive. All conversation shuts down. I can't hear you anymore. But we must understand that everything that we do, we are operating within systems, right? So if you go to school and your kids go to school, they learn, the curriculum is from their point of view, European point of view, Western ideology, Western ideas and philosophy. Everything they hear is about white people greatness. Everything they hear is about white people's greatness. Everything they hear and learn is about white people greatness. So think about that. So you have black people who are taught within our public school curriculum that they are slaves, right? Like our past is slavery, we came from slaves. And because it's framed that way, we as people, we internalize that. And that makes us feel inferior, right? It's part of white supremacy. It's part of this framing, right? So then we feel inferior. We start to hate ourselves, our color, our hair, right? Because we throw some weave in and we can't wear our natural, right? Yes. Or we trying to lighten our skin because Western culture, white culture has told us beauty is defined by this thing, right? Yes. Greatness is defined by white experience, white ideas, white greatness, right? Versus if slavery was framed and taught to our children, not that we black people were slaves, but we were enslaved. That's the difference. We were never slaves. We were never savages. We were never less than. What we were people that was removed from their homeland and enslaved, treated like animals. Our babies were fed to alligators. Our babies were cut from our stomachs. Our men limbs were snatched from their bodies by mules and horses. White people had lynching parties, invited their kids, put the body on fire, celebrated, made it postcards, and sent it to their friends. And that kind of those kind of things still exist. If you want to find a postcard with a black body burning from a tree, it's still very probable and very out there, right? Imagine what that does to a black person and a brown person's psyche. Similar to what's happening right now, right? With all these police killings everywhere. Every time you turn on the radio, the news, or social media, is another black man down. It's another black woman down. Another little girl getting beat and treated less than a human. And it desensitizes us, right? Oh, there's just another black person killed. But we fail to remember the impact of that. It's traumatic for us. Every time a black or brown person sees another black or brown person being murdered, and you see it on video, you see him fall into the ground, it's re-triggering and re-traumatizing. Right? Like when a person dies in North Carolina, I cry, I grieve, I mourn. And then my coworker might say, I don't get why you're so upset. You haven't even allowed the facts to show up. You need to see the other side of the story. You need to wait to hear the story. You have to hear the whole context. And my response would be, what is there to see other than the video? What is there to see other than the video? Keith Scott was standing outside of his car and he was shot multiple times for nothing. You see it on the video. Tamir Rice, 12 years old, playing in the park with a BB gun, shot and killed. Another young boy, 13 years old, Ohio, killed, a week and a half ago? BB gun, shot to death. Why? Because they were seen as spiders.
Okay, now.
And when you see them, white people are like, oh my God, what do I do? And I say that because I watched a video the other day of this police officer who walked up to a car with a black man sitting in it who happened to be a private investigator. He comes up to the car and says, get out the car. The guy's like, why? I didn't even do anything. I'm just sitting here. Why are you sitting here? I can sit here. I'm working. I'm in my car. I don't have to get out. Next thing you know, this guy puts the deputy puts his arm on this black guy. He grabs his arm because his arm is sitting on the window, and he grabs his arm. He's like, why are you grabbing me? And he was like, you're not following my commands. He's like, you didn't tell me to do anything. And he hadn't. He hadn't. And the deputy's hand is shaking as he's holding this black man's arm. Why? Because he sees him as a spider. He's afraid. He lets go of his arm to answer the phone, a phone call or something to respond to the dispatcher. And then the black guy in the truck removes his earpiece. And guess what? The police officer pulls out his gun and points it at his head. And says, don't move, don't you effing move. Do you want me to blow your head off? Do you want me to blow your head off? And I remember thinking like, oh my God, don't let this man die on TV. Please don't let this be another killing of another man, another black man. Let this not be. But you can feel the tension, you can feel the fear, you can feel the uncertainty of this officer who was frightened to death. And why? Because he saw a spider. No other cause. There was no other reason for this response and action, nothing but fear. And then the sergeant comes up, which happens to be a black man, and he tells the deputy to scoot back and relax. And this whole time, this guy in the car is filming this. And I remember, I felt like I was watching a movie. Like, oh my God, is he gonna kill him? Is he gonna kill him? Please don't kill him. Please don't kill him. He didn't do anything. Whenever we can watch someone get choked like Eric Gardner and think it's okay, anytime you see a white man being charged with rape and getting a month or 2 months, something's wrong with our system. Why? Because white people aren't seen as spiders. They're seen as people, humans who make mistakes. Oh, it must be a mental wellness issue. When that dude killed 9 people in that church in Charleston, they took that man to Burger King. When that guy a month ago in Florida ate off the face of a woman and killed another, the police still didn't kill him. How is it possible that you can eat somebody's face off and not die? And I mean, like, I don't believe anyone should die. I think they did a good job by bringing him in. But how can it that a white man can show up and eat someone's face off and not being seen as a threat? And all I have to do is reach for my earpiece and I'm dead. All Trayvon Martin had to do is go to the store after dark to get some Skittles, and it cost him his life. Keith Scott had a book, and his wife kept screaming, he has a brain injury, he has a brain injury. Remember the guy that was sitting outside with his autistic patient, who was a counselor, a therapist? Yeah. Police show up and they shoot this brother for no reason. Like, we're watching this. We're watching this. Why? Because they saw him as a spider. This is not personal. Racism isn't personal. This is something that we all must work intentionally every day to eradicate. We must scoop this thing of racism out our boat of life every single day. You must scoop it out. You must recognize when black people say this hurt, it hurts. When someone says Black Lives Matter and your response is all lives matter, and you're like, it's not racist, all lives matter, lives do matter. Well, it is racist. very racist, because it wasn't an All Lives Matter campaign prior to the Black Lives Matter campaign. It was a response to. It wasn't a Blue Lives Matter campaign before Black Lives Matter campaign. It was response to. Blue lives is a profession. I can switch up anytime. I can choose or not choose to be a police officer. I can never not choose to be black, even if I want to pretend. Even if I want to say, you know what, I was raised by my Norwegian grandmother and I believe in white culture. When I walk into the room, when I walk into class, and when I walk in here, you see my blackness. First, then my gender, right?
Yes.
I can't put my blackness on the shelf and change my mind. I can't. And I'm very grateful that I was born into this black body. Very grateful. Because there's a lot of magnificence within us that we don't even know. When I tell you about our history and who we are, and the fact that we built civilizations, the fact that we traveled the world prior to any man. When I tell you our greatness, it's amazing. If we taught our children their greatness, black and brown children, their greatness, they would know where to go. They would know their own competence and their own abilities. But no, you know what we teach them? That they're slaves, that their ancestors were slaves, that their ancestors were savages, that their ancestors were animals. We don't teach us of our greatness. Why? Because we reside in a culture, in a society that white culture is the norm. And that is why Black Lives Matter. That's why the campaign exists. That's why there's a movement. Because the world sees us as spiders. And it's time to wake up. It's time to acknowledge, accept, and act. Thank you.
You can tell she has a lot more to say, and she will. Don't worry about hearing it later. About a week ago, I have a friend in Appleton, and we were talking about white privilege. And he said, you know, I grew up in a white family, I had mother and father, nice home, talking about opportunities he had. He got his bachelor's degree, he got a doctorate, he's a professor, and he got a law degree too. And he said, with all that, through white privilege, how could I not be a racist? So that's what we're talking about. Same thing Brandi is saying. It's a part of us. So now we're going to go. I want to introduce Gregory Chambers. Gregory, you want to come up here? He's from Milwaukee, and he's a member of the SURJ, Standing Up for Racial Justice, and also for the Coalition for Justice. Margaret Jurek and I went down and we met Gregory. And when I asked Gregory, how should I introduce you? And he said, just say I'm an autodidact. And Margaret said, she's a wordsmith, she knows a lot. She says, how do you spell it? And I was saying, what does that mean? So it means a person that is self-taught. And Gregory tells us he spent a lot of hours in the library, right?
Well, I have my own library now.
Okay, good. Okay, correction.
The word is autodidactic.
Autodidactic. Yeah. So he's been active in Milwaukee in the social justice movement for about 3 years. Gregory, take it away.
I'm not necessarily sure if I need a mic, but I guess I'm gonna hold it just because. Scott generally asked me to tell you guys about my experience, and I thought very, very long and hard about how to best illustrate or what would encapsulate my experience in Milwaukee, living in Milwaukee. So I've decided that instead of just telling you, I'm going to show you. So, everybody that's a parent, please stand up. Okay. So, I want you to imagine, if you will, one night, your child coming home. It's about 12 midnight. he or she is 18. Now, they have school in the morning. So you're like, it's 12, I know he's 18, he's, technically grown, but if he doesn't get, or she doesn't get her butt home, no TV, no phone, no nothing, I'm going to put my foot in, okay, whatever. But it's 12 midnight. Your child walks in the door. And you say, where you been? You got school in the morning. Where have you been? Your child says nothing. They look at you. And you notice tears are coming down their face. And you're like, what's wrong? What's wrong? They say nothing. They run to you. They clutch you, literally clutch you. Now you're a parent. You're a parent. Your first response is to figure out what happened and what I can do to help. How can I solve it? Y'all can sit down. I ain't gonna have y'all stand the entire story. That would be rude. Like, if this boy don't, my leg though. So you ask them what's wrong. They tell you. They say, Mom, Dad, I was standing on the bus stop in the middle of Cudahy. I'm waiting for the bus to come. I just came from hanging out with some friends because one of my friends was in town. A squad car passes me. Now before this, their relationship or association with the police were that they were the good guys.
Yes.
They even have relationships with the cops. And they knew the cops in their neighborhood by name, by face. They played basketball with the cops. And then that night, everything changed. They say, Mom, Dad, I was standing on the bus stop, squad car passes by. They look at me in the face and I wave and I smile. Don't think nothing of it. It's benign. Now let me paint the picture for you. It's the middle of winter, February. It's 20 degrees below zero. Keep that in mind for context. They say, Mom, about a minute later, squad car comes back, pulls over to the side of me. The cops get out the car. Now, imagine them saying, a cop comes up to me and says, where are you going? They say, I'm on the way home. I'm waiting for the bus. I'm just waiting for the bus. I was like, oh, where are you coming from? Hanging out with some friends. My friend was in town. They kind of oversharing, because they don't look at the cops as a threat.
Right.
It's benign.
Yes.
They're their protectors.
Yes.
Now, the cop is asking them, well, where do you live? Oh, I live in Milwaukee. And the cop asks and say, have you been to Cudahy before? Says no. And they say, oh, well, you kind of fit the description of a guy that's been prowling the area. And they say to the cop, I've never been here before. This is my first time in Cudahy. They say, can we see your ID? They give them the ID. They go back and they check. The record comes back clean as a whistle. As a whistle. And they say accusingly, like, oh, you have a clean record.
Lord have mercy.
Okay, that's cool. I go to school. I play sports. I love music. I watch cartoons and all that jazz, but okay, clean record. They say, so you're just going home? I say, yes. So to kind of paint the picture, now imagine them telling you that by the end of the altercation, they were face down in a bank of snow on a corner with their pants down as one cop grabs them and the other cop standing over him authoritatively smiling. And all they can ask is, what did I do wrong? And you as a parent have to hear this. And the first thing you're thinking is like, no, they touched you? Yes, they touched you. And imagine the feeling that you have to sit there and look at them as they're crying, not grabbing or not even able to grapple the reality or what just happened, or the gravity of it, or the intensity of it. And then you sit there and you realize you have to tell them a truth that you hoped and prayed you never had to tell them. That's what it's like being black in America. And all you can say is, son, daughter, sit down. We have to have a talk. Now, you saw Brandi sit here and the kids sat around her, and usually you sit around, they tell stories. Black parents telling black children about how to behave around cops and the reality that they have to face when involving themselves in encounters with cops have become our oral tradition. I'm gonna say that again. Black parents telling black children about how they should interact and engage with law enforcement has become our oral tradition. Passed down. And this has happened actually since 1865. Historically. That happened to me when I was 18 years old. I was 18. I was young, naive, and I thought the world of police officers because the cops in my neighborhood were very nice to me. I played basketball with them. I taught a couple of them how to play cans. If you don't know what cans is, you can Google it online. It's a fun game. You just sit across, you have two cans, and you shoot a basketball to hit the can, the first person to 100 rings. Now, unless somebody's cheating, that's a whole nother story. But you get the point. So before I was 18, I had a very, very, idealistic superhero idea of police officers. Now, I lived in the Sherman Park neighborhood. Now, I know a lot of you probably have heard about the recent riot that happened in Sherman Park. Where they burned down a BP, they tore up a beauty salon, and all of this happened after Seville Smith was shot by an officer. I was at the riot. I saw everything. Now, the most polarizing thing I saw at that riot was not the fact that the BP was set ablaze on fire as people were in the street, not the fact that 2 bus stations got knocked over. The most polarizing thing that I saw was that it was 2 men. 2 men, about, stand up. Yeah, they was about his size.
Okay.
They were about his size, and they were embracing each other. One of them clearly had his head in the other guy's shoulder. He was crying, and I sat there and I stood there because I was walking along because somebody texted me and was like, "Hey, Greg." I said, "What?" Like, they burning down the BP. I'm like, "Where?" And he told me, so I went and drove as fast as I could. Got there and walked. The anger, the frustration, the pain. You saw, it's like legacies of injustice wrapped up in one night of explosion. It was a powder keg. But those 2 men, and all you can hear the guy say as he was sitting there on his shoulder was, "I'm tired, bro. I'm tired." And the other guy, all he could say was, "I know." Brandi talked about systemic racism. There's overt and invert aspects of racism. Now, when we think about racism, a lot of times, the picture that you think of is a white sheet and somebody walking around looking like a ghost, look like he's Casper's third cousin, far removed, and walking around doing unjust things, like the bombing of 4 girls. Or more heinous, the bombing of Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. Where 3,000 black folks were murdered. And what's interesting about that point is that history has recorded that the most heinous terrorist attack took place in 1995 with the Oklahoma City bombing. but only 168 people were killed. 168, 3,000.
Okay.
168,
Okay.
3,000.
Okay.
Now this idea that all lives matter, now that should be important, but apparently if the worst terrorist attack was 168, yet 3,000, something's off. I say that to say that it is not just about the statistics or the facts. It's about the history. I'm a history buff. And I like to think about how all of this correlates. Now, we have this idea that, they've been teaching that Lincoln freed the slaves. Y'all see my face?
Yes.
Now, the Emancipation Proclamation did, in fact, was an executive order that was done in 1863. Now, it did technically free the slaves, but most slave masters kept their slaves in captivity. Exactly. Now, while they were in the Confederacy, now there was states in the North that did own slaves. There were people in the North that did own slaves. And, well, but let's also talk about the fact that once they were released, a lot of them stayed. And then you have in 1865 this introduction of them into the prison system. Now in 1865, what's interesting is that before that, 95% of the people that were in prisons were white. In 1865, it jumped up to 95% of the people that took up the prisons were black. How do you go from 95% white to 95% black that fast? You have to correlate all of this. They implemented things like pig law and black code, and then Jim Crow came. And these were things where people were tried for menial crimes and they were given harsh sentences. And then you have the privatization of prisons. So this is all like systemic, but at the same time historical as it correlates. Now, if you go further into history, you have the 13th Amendment was drafted, which apparently also liberated the slaves, but also said that you could still be legally a slave if you are convicted of a crime. Now, in this day and age, who most likely is convicted of a crime and serves time?
Wow.
It's important that we educate.
Yeah.
My resolution is that people need to know more.
Yes. Yes.
If you want to face your racism, face what the legacy of it entails. And that's why it's important, and obviously that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's take questions.
I forgot to mention that the organization that I work for, Young, Gifted, and Black, is a volunteer-based organization. I don't know what organization Greg works for or what he does, but we do all our work for free. Everything's for free. People donate. People spend hours, 60 hours a week sometimes working for the cause because we believe in it. And I say that to say, donate. Give us some money. Give us some resources. And I'm just going to ask right out because our work depends on you. Our ability to travel and speak, to encourage, to engage, to mobilize, to organize, to educate, to hold forums, to everything that we do, our workshops that some of you guys attended last week, it's possible because of people like you. Share your resources with people like us. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have a collection in a while. But, let's take some questions now.
You can ask me anything. Personal.
We know that.
Right?
I don't need a microphone. Aren't you angry?
Hell yes.
I mean, how do you grow up and not be angry?
Well, James Baldwin says that to be black in America and relatively conscious of being enraged all the time. All the time. So, being angry, but finding a way to how to direct that anger is the key. And it's difficult. It's very difficult because you have people that will try to invalidate your anger. I had somebody when Terrence Crutcher was still listening, I had somebody ask me, well, how do you react when you're pulled over by the cops? Do you have an attitude? I said, my attitude has to be the deciding factor on whether I live or die. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
My attitude. Not if the cop is in immediate danger, not if I actually showed a weapon, but how my demeanor was towards the cop. And, you know, if you would just comply. Charles Kinsey, a therapist in Florida, was laid out on the ground with his hands up and the cop still shot him. And when he asked the cop, why you shot me, he said, I don't know.
Yes.
He saw a spider.
He said, I don't know. But what's even more interesting about that is the fact that that same police department was guilty of using photos of black people as target practice.
But that's not just that police officer.
But yeah, that's not just that police officer.
That police station.
But that police station, that entire department was found guilty of that. Target practice.
And I would add to the patriarchy, right? Because we often don't talk about that word, patriarchy and sexism, and what that does, right? So me as a black woman, when I get loud and I be like, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm angry, then people look at me and say, look at that black girl. She's angry, she's aggressive, she's violent. Because my anger to white people looked like violence. It looks like violence. And then you add the piece of me being a woman, then it's the piece of, oh, she's overly emotional. And why does she speak with so much emotion when she speaks? You know, this conversation isn't about emotions. We need facts and logics. You know, I'm sorry.
You want to take the mic?
Oh, sure. I think you were next.
Oh, I'll make
You right there anyway.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on something that you said, young man, and what is a really bad and feeling like you're captive is when you're in the midst of that and feeling like you're helpless. I was in the car, I'm the driver, and my oldest son was sitting in the back, and there were 2 other ladies with me. And this officer pulled me over, and I asked him, why was he pulling me over? And he says, oh, because he had the right. Because what they were doing is that if they feel like they need to stop a person and check you out, then they're gonna do that. That's all the reason that they need. Like, okay. So then he looks in the back seat. I'm the driver, but he asked my son for his ID. So I asked him, why are you asking him for his ID? I'm the driver, you pulling me over. He told me that if I said another word, that he was gonna take me and all of my riders in. And he said to my son, give me your ID. And at that moment, you're feeling like you just want to explode. Because I wanted to really just jump out my car and just jump him. I did, because now you're picking at my kid, and he's not doing anything but sitting in the back seat. And when they took his information, we're sitting there, and all the ladies with me, and Tanisha was one. You guys know Tanisha. She's going off, and he's telling us to shut up. And, you know, so he's running my son's information. He comes back and asks him, are you sure this is your name? Because he's like, yeah. He says, well, I can't find anything on you. And he said, well, maybe it's because there isn't anything. And at that moment, he stood there and he's looking at us, but now his tone is changing. Now he's trying to be polite. He thought he had a person. My sons would come home talking this thing, Driving While Black, a DWB. You know, stopped at my house. My boys couldn't even sit on the front porch with their friends. And they were made to stand up against their own home and be frisked. You know, but my husband and I, we weren't taking that anymore. We had to do something about that. But I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you. I just want to point out that police history and legacy was to do just that, right? Intimidate us. Make sure we know our place in society. And that's what they continue to do. And I think what's happening in America now is that we're actually seeing it. This isn't new.
Right.
This isn't increasingly happening. This has always freaking happened. White people live in a different world than we do. You live differently. You get pulled over, you mad as hell. You like, why are you pulling me over? Don't be pulling me over. We're frightened to die.
Yeah.
That conversation and response could lead to our murder. I just wanted to point that out.
Hi, my name's Robin. Hi. So I work with a nonprofit organization, and one of my staff members is a young African American. He's got a doctorate. He's wonderful, and part of our job is to get out there and canvass, go door to door, and he unfortunately is at the black while canvassing. So black while driving is canvassing while black. And the other day we were canvassing out in North Fond du Lac, and a female officer pulls him over. I have to say, I have never, because I am white, never thought like that he'd have to pull out his camera phone, you know, his phone, and just start taping right away. What are you doing here? Pulls it out, starts taping. Excuse me, can you repeat that for me? What are you doing here?
He took a right
I'm
turn
sorry.
and he left America.
I'm sorry, I'm exercising my constitutional right as a black American. You need to tell me what you're doing here. I'm exercising my right as as an American citizen, my constitutional right to walk out here in North Fond du Lac. And he said, I want you to know that you're being tape recorded. Oh, you need to turn that tape recorder off. Can you please turn that tape recorder off? So this is happening right here, right now, guys. This has to stop. We have to push to get past this. This is horrible. It's awful. It is happening in our language. It happens at every single door I go to. I cannot tell you, it is sick. It is disgusting. It is our friends. It is our neighbors. It is the people we work with. It is the way that we talk to each other.
Yes.
It is sickness, it is ignorance, it is lack of education, and if we don't change the language we speak to each other with, we are not going to make a difference in our lives. And it is Black Lives Matter. It is not all lives matter. It is Black Lives Matter. Because we have oppressed, and I am ashamed. I am absolutely ashamed to have lived in a culture like this.
So, piggyback off that real quick.
Thank you for
How
sharing,
many of
Mike.
y'all have ever heard of Zachary Hammond? Anybody? Zachary Hammond?
I haven't.
Never? Anybody heard of Dylan Noble? William Bowers? Nobody. Interesting. So, reason why I say that because a lot of times when people bring up the all lives matter thing, when they always talk about it, I say, well, did you ever heard of Zachary Hammond? Zachary Hammond was a white boy who was popped by the cops for having 50 pounds of weed on him. Now this happened last year and around June. And then Dylan Noble was a white guy who was killed this year, and he had his hands up. They had video footage of it. Now, my issue with all lives matter is that when you say all lives matter, Zachary Hammond and Dylan Noble and William Bowers, who was a 51-year-old guy who was shot while riding a bike, and people don't know about this story, but I say, well, Zachary Hammond is a white guy. You should be just as upset. He was shot with impunity, over 50 pounds of weed. Like 50 pounds of weed equals death now? And he wasn't in Colorado, unfortunately. He probably would have been safe there. But the fact of the matter remains. It's important that people understand that when you say Black Lives Matter or all lives matter, that you are invalidating an experience. But then you don't even realize that your own people are suffering at this. Like, and then you say blue lives matter. Blue lives, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this very frankly. I don't care who it upsets. Blue lives do not exist.
Thank you.
They don't. Because I can't take this off. I cannot take this off. There is no way to peel this off.
Blue Lives is 40 hours a week.
And they get paid. I wish I could get paid for being black. Like, I like to get paid for being black, please. What, is there an application I gotta fill out? Is there a? Do we get 401k? Because I'm black as hell.
Hey, Greg, I just want to jump in real quick and make a point about having to break out a camera. And the camera is our only power. Phil, I forget, I can't say his name. Castro, what's his first name? Philando Castro murdered, on camera as his girlfriend recorded him.
And his 4-year-old daughter.
And his 4-year-old baby in the back. And our only power is videotaping, and even then, they are found not guilty, not indicted. There's nothing to. So I just want to say, like, when you talk about powerless and hopelessness and anger and being emotional and hurt, and what messages we receive every day as black people, what messages our children receive about our worth. Because what we're doing is being dehumanized, objectified, right? That's what white culture have done to us since we were been here. So when I said at first that we need to acknowledge, accept, and act, I need each one of you to continue to have this conversation. I need you to have household conversations, family conversations, living room conversations, invite your friends over, invite facilitators, do some workshops, talk about it, challenge it. And again, you are scared of spiders and you don't even know why. So that means you have to put new data in your brain, right? Because your brain pulls from the database that it has. And your database has been bombarded with information that tell you black and brown people are animals, criminals, and dangerous. So in order for you to reprogram your mind and your database, you gotta put new data in there. You gotta get you some black friends. You gotta go hang out around black and brown people. I'm just saying that's how you do your circuit. Here you go. Sorry, Scott.
Because Bishop you don't have to apologize. That's my job. I'm the bad guy. I'm the timekeeper. Bishop Haywood has to be back at his church now. So some people are on schedule. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this part of the program. At 11:30, please join us in the far room, and we'll have more conversations.